Greetings, welcome to the SciFi Pubcast, the podcast that tries to be a pub, and perhaps a pub that tries to be a podcast. As always, we are looking for customers to come visit our bar. So if you're passionate about something and you want to be on a podcast, well, let us know, because this bar is all about community. If you want to help us out, please consider leaving a 5-star review wherever you find the show, joining our Discord server, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Yes, there's the intro. My name is Joel. I'm the owner of the SciFi Pubcast, so to speak. Let's see who's in the bar today. Yes, we have people here today. We have our regular staff members, Carrie Simpson and Derek Beebe. And we also have Hey! Yes, there's people in the bar. We also have a special guest customer, Mike Sinkins. Mike, we go way back, at least till, I think, May?
I think so, yes.
May 2021, so at least a month.
Yeah, I would say a month, yeah.
I just moved to London, Ontario 2 months ago to go do a PhD at Western University in law. And so I moved back into an old house with an old friends, and I'm getting to know people in the local community. And Mike is very active in the visual artist scene here in London, Ontario. And he also is quite the film buff. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, yes.
So how would you describe yourself to someone at the bar if you had 20 seconds?
Probably a bit not, kind of like quiet, so like just thinking a lot of thoughts at the time, sometimes a little bit expressive. It's a bit of a mixture of both. And I think, I want to listen mostly. And I like hearing more stories from other people than myself explaining who I am.
Fair enough. Like, I don't even like listening to myself on tape. Never mind talking about myself.
Yeah.
There I go. And of course we have Carrie Simpson from Southern California. How's Carrie today?
I'm doing good. It's starting to get a bit warm down here in LA. It's supposed to get up to 100 by the middle of the week. So yay!
Wow!
Yay!
Yeah. At least we don't have the snow up here in Canada yet. So in Ontario, at least.
Yet?
So, yeah, that's probably in October, November. But yeah. And of course we have Derek. How's Pennsylvania doing? The mountains of Pennsylvania.
The temperatures have been fluctuating wildly as normal. I think yesterday it was only 70. And the day before that, it was 90. It's up and down all over the place.
Mm.
Uh-huh. It's been really nice in Ontario, at least. We've had some thunderstorms. One went through this morning. 3:30 in the morning, I heard this huge thunderclap, and I woke up, and then I realized it was just the gods messing with me. So there you go. So Derek, before we move on, of course, we're talking the pub and the bar. I got to ask you, sir, how is our kitchen doing?
It's a lot cleaner now, thanks to the dish that I'm offering this week. I call it AS Gum. I don't know if the movie said it this way, but in the books they talk about the viruses as AS1 and AS2. So this is AS Gum. And what I did was I got cinnamon and sugar for taste, and then I got all that black soot in the oven and scraped that out. And I kind of mixed it together into like a gummy paste that you can chew, because I forget if this is in the first book, but in the second book, like if you get infected, you kind of get this like black ash coming out of your mouth. So if you chew this stuff, it'll look like you're infected with the Andromeda virus. And subsequently, the kitchen is much cleaner now because I got all that stuff out. Because you know what I say when I'm cooking something, it's not done until you can taste the char.
Oh God. Sounds like cafeteria food. I don't know.
There are days when I wonder why I haven't let the Ewoks eat him yet, and then I realize that I don't want the Ewoks to hate me.
There's that. But Derek was right. We're talking the movie The Andromeda Strain from 1971, directed by Robert Wise. And let's see, it's based off of the Michael Crichton book that came out in 1969. The film itself, it was great in terms of having special effects really increased it. We have Douglas Trumbull, who did a great job on that. This is in the days before CGI, so everything was on film, so they use different film techniques. They also use split screens, which is quite interesting, and tickers throughout the movie. So I think this film deserves to be re-examined in today's life and in today's world, because not only is it a great film, sci-fi film, and not only because it influenced so many other outbreak-type movies. We live with COVID nowadays, and it really echoes what's happening in our real lives at present. So,
yes, thank you for waiting over a year to start talking pandemics and sci-fi.
Hey, we did a show like last year, and we mentioned this movie, but we wanted something to be more sinister rather than hopeful. Oh God, I need a drink. I don't know. Derek, have you read the first book?
Yes, sometime last year when the sequel came out, I read the first book followed by the sequel novel, and I actually think the sequel novel is a lot more interesting and thrilling. Obviously, the first one is a product of its times, being written in the 60s. I'm sure at the time it was very, very forward-thinking and progressive, but reading it now, it's a little small in scale. But yeah, it was still an entertaining read, and if I remember correctly, the first book and the second book, they were both written almost as kind of like a found footage secondary document format, where it was like a report reconstructing the events of something that happened based on testimony and lab data and that sort of thing, which is a very interesting format for the books to take.
Well, Crichton's books in general kind of read that way. It's like the introductions to most of his books, at least most of the ones I've read like this is something that actually happened. This is like a retelling of something that actually happened, even though it probably didn't happen at all. It's like even Jurassic Park is like this is a recounting of things that happened on Isla Nebula. I'm like, but it didn't actually happen. But it sounds like completely plausible when you're reading it.
Yeah, I think Michael Crichton was great. He's the granddaddy of the techno thriller, right? Along with Tom Clancy, where he used technical knowledge in his storytelling. So in this case, with Andromeda Strain, it's so technical. The reports, the scientific, even the coinage of the verbs they use or the words they use to describe a lot of this stuff. And there's some intensity about that, where we use technology to shape our daily lives and even our own existence or the lack of, in this case. And before we forget, so Derek, going back to the sequel book, so it's called The Andromeda Evolution, that came out in 2019, and it's written by Daniel H. Wilson, based off of a lot of the works Michael Crichton did before he passed away. Is that right?
Yeah, I've actually just recently discovered Daniel Wilson. He's written a lot of amazing novels. He wrote one called Robogenesis, Robocalypse is the first one. The second one is Robogenesis. And that was actually optioned to be a film by Steven Spielberg. He ended up not making it, but hopefully that'll still get made one day. It's very similar to World War Z, the novel, not the film, in that it's kind of it's like a secondary document kind of thing, where it's like, people giving testimony after the fact of something that happened. And World War Z was about a zombie outbreak. Robocalypse is about a robot uprising. And it's a series of kind of short stories told from many different people's perspectives of this war against the robots. So those were two excellent books. He also wrote Amped, and I think there's another one I'm forgetting. But yeah, I've read all of his books, and they're all really interesting. They are very Crichton-esque. And when he wrote this sequel, he aped Michael Crichton's style perfectly. It really does feel like Michael Crichton wrote this book. And the story is bigger and more interesting and more advanced than the first one on every level. I actually just read it a second time when I knew we were doing this episode, and it was just as thrilling the second time around. I highly recommend this book. It was really good. And if they ever make it into a movie, it would be a really great movie.
So what you're saying to us, Derek, is that it's very catchy?
Yes. It's infectious.
And
actually, this is something a friend of mine pointed out years ago, and I just double checked the data on this. the novel came out like 2 months before the moon landing. So like 2 months before the moon landing, we already have someone in sci-fi talking about, what could happen if, a extraterrestrial biological agent, gets scooped up by a satellite and taken to Earth. So it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, and if you listen to a lot of Star Talk and stuff, they'll talk about how all the precautions they take even now with the Jupiter and Saturn missions to make sure that they aren't bringing any foreign contaminants onto the planets they're studying and the moons they're studying. So it's just like, okay, this is all just all connected.
But eventually the reverse is going to happen, right? We are going to go to Mars, and we are going to, use our own excrement as fertilizer, right? So that's kind of like the Martian, right? Okay.
It is crazy to think that this book was written at a time when space travel was a brand new concept, and people really didn't know what would happen. What would they be exposed to up there, and what could they bring back down? I mean, it was a legitimate unknown back then.
Yeah, and this is during the Cold War. People are on edge to begin with the threat of nuclear annihilation on a daily basis. And we have the Apollo missions, and they kept on going until the last one, Apollo 17 in 1972. So that was after the film came out. So it was this age where, you have NASA and their astronauts bringing back moon rocks and who knows what else. And I can see how people can be a bit fearful of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, like the fear context is always like, it became kind of like not a cliche, but it kind of like it's a theme going through at that period of time. And, I think Andromeda Strain was probably the best one to show it in that sort of clinical sense. And, just the way it was shot and everything.
Yeah. But it also speaks to what people think of science and scientists, right? Yeah. Do you trust the scientists out there, or why bother, or is this going to be bad for the politicians?
That's right.
Yeah, which is very, apropos of what's happening today and with COVID. People have this distrust of authority and distrust of the scientific establishment because, what we know changes with more knowledge which we go.
And this is a bad example for current events, but in the case of the movie, I don't remember if they mentioned it in the book because it's been so long since I've read it. But the politicians are going, we can wait. We don't have to bomb the town today. We can wait 24 hours, and that turned out to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, which usually goes against the rule, which is usually you bomb it, right? That's what you do. You bomb. There's a problem. More than likely, bombing it will solve your problem. Which is a horrible thing to say, but that's a lot of the mentality in terms of strategic thought and tactical thought. Okay.
A lot of reactions and
yeah.
It's like that was like the written protocol for the team, and the politicians are just like, we don't need to do this just yet. We can wait.
And then
Isn't it a famous adage from Vietnam that we bombed the village to save the village for the U.S. military?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was. I think it was something along those lines, but the sentiment's there.
Yeah, like the only way to save the village from the Viet Cong was to destroy it.
Yeah, there's that.
I wonder. Obviously I wasn't alive at the time of this, but I wonder what impact this had, given the fact that this novel and film were wildly popular. I wonder if it was like what Jaws did for the beach, if Andromeda Strain did for space travel, if it kind of raised people's fears of what could be out there, what could be brought back.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think there was that. I just think that was more of the feeling of science fiction during the 70s, up until probably Star Wars in 1977, A New Hope, which kind of changed things. Because you see a lot of that, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind too, right? This clinical scientific approach to it, and Big Brother, the U.S. government, operating secret bases. And let me just say, I really love this secret base. The design of Wildfire, right? So this underground laboratory / bunker, and the fail-proof things, of course, that if there's any contagion that escapes, that it automatically goes to a self-destruct nuclear, system that will blow itself up. Isn't that cool? I love that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, what are they doing at Area 51? It's kind of the same sort of scenario in some way. Like, people are always like, "What's in there?" And we no one knew about it until just 1990s. So it kind of like it was kind of a precursor to that.
I was thinking Area 51 when they were getting over there too. It's like, oh yeah, well this is also in Nevada, where there's out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and it was. I've taken the Area 51 tour from Vegas, so I've been up to the gatehouse, and it's airy as hell. And they did so much nuclear atomic testing in that area. It's like, yeah, it has this vibe to it, and it's a scary, vibe because there's so many unknowns, and there's a lot of interest because of that, and the whole the role of the U.S. government and what they telling us. So that's where conspiracy theories come alive. But you look at that. To go back to this movie, right? Okay, you have these scientists and this medical doctor, and then you have the military police from the United States Air Force show up at a dinner party, going, "Yeah, you need to get in the car now," right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back then it was a lot more fear about the military showing up because they've never. Today it's a little bit more. You see them at airports, and it's almost like a very common sighting. But back then it was more, like, oh, well, must be really serious, and that was an interesting point that somebody pointed out to me.
Yeah, I look forward, if I ever become a law professor, which hopefully I will, that the U.S. government's going to show up at my doorstep and say, "Get in the car." Yeah, I look forward to that day. Yeah, because they need space lawyers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Carrie's just nodding her head.
Oh, by the way, Joel, if you're a fan of the Wildfire base, there's a novel by some of my favorite authors, Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. It's called Mount Dragon. It's one of their first novels, and it's very similar in premise to this. It takes place at this remote desert, infectious research base, and they're working on a virus, and there's going to be an outbreak, and they have to get through the defenses of the base and everything. It's very good, and it's also a very good page turner. Mount Dragon by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child.
Excellent. Good to hear. I put that on my reading list, which is huge at the moment. Let me say this. The satellite itself, it was tiny, wasn't it? To me, it was a really small, like a CubeSat almost. I don't think they almost like Sputnik size, right? To me, it's like, I know why they made it so small because of the storyline, the plot point. But to me, it's like you can take it into the town's doctor's office, or you can put it in the laboratory. It's like, and so this is designed to scoop alien material from space. Okay, who knew?
Well, they also mentioned some kind of lunar base that would normally have been set up to decontaminate the satellite, and I guess it just got bypassed or whatever.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah, let's keep the unknown contaminant on the moon. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of interesting, like the actual people in the lab, or are becoming like viruses themselves, and they were when he was trying to stop the self-destruct button, they were trying to just kill him before he got up to stop it. And I thought that was kind of an interesting scene.
Yeah, that is interesting. The humans have become the virus.
Right? I thought that was also just an example of why you don't just have one person be the failsafe.
Yeah, because what if he tripped and broke his neck on day one?
It's interesting. Yeah, and they mentioned this in the book as well, the movies. It's just was the odd man hypothesis, where you have to be a single male in order to make rational decisions. At least the stats or the odds are better for a single male without a family, without a wife to decide to stop an atomic bomb going off. Which is one, I don't think that's valid. I don't think it's accurate. And two, it's downright sexist. But still, what do you guys think?
Well, it definitely shouldn't have to be a man, but I think there is a kind of sense into having it be like someone without a family to have to make the decision. That kind of makes sense to me. But yeah, definitely, there's no reason it should be a man. If anything, it should be a woman.
No, I think, yeah, okay, fine. We can change it to the odd person hypothesis. That's probably better. Oh, God. Well, let's talk about some of these actors, because the actors in this film, to me, they were very strong, right? We have Arthur Hill playing Dr. Jeremy Stone. We have James Olsen playing Dr. Mark Hell, I should say. David Wayne playing Dr. Charles Dutton. And, of course, we have Kate Reid, a Canadian no less, who plays, I think, the outstanding character of Dr. Ruth Levitt. And then, of course, we have the lab assistants, Paula Kelly, who played Karen Ensign. And to me, it's funny because there's so many men in this movie, but it's the women who actually strikes out as good characters to watch, at least how I see it. Because they're more realistic, they're more, more real.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because like with the women, they're more critical, like it's critical thinking, and the men are just playing out their acts in a situation that would be, as usual in most films. But in this one, it was like the women were actually, or the woman that was actually was taking care of everybody around them, emotionally as well. And
I like the fact that the Dr. Ruth Levitt character was not a sex symbol. Because that was, that was popular during the 70s with science fiction films. I always had some sex kitten scientist type to tag along. Whereas this, we see more of a realistic portrayal of a very smart, educated woman with health issues. Spoiler alert, and who is a critical thinker.
Yeah. Who was hiding those health issues because otherwise she would have been run out of her profession.
Absolutely. You have structural bias and structural discrimination going on.
Exactly.
I should point out that in the book, all of the scientists were men. I think there were like female assistants, but all the main characters were male.
Yeah, and Michael Crichton was okay with the change. And if you see the extras on the Blu-ray disc or go on YouTube, there's some stuff on there as well. They talk about this stuff. And the director, Robert Wise, was very much against it up until he was convinced by the screenwriter, which I forgot who was the screenwriter for this, and I will look it up in a second. But it's, that a realistic woman it will work rather than, say, a sex kitten, which is the biggest fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
One thing I'd like to bring up about the first half of the novel is I thought it was a really great mystery when they just, they show up at this town, everyone's dead. Some of the people on the camera, wandered around and killed themselves. And then the only survivors were an old man and a screaming baby. And that's a really great medical mystery because what in the world would those two have in common with each other? And why did some people die right away? And why did some people survive and go nuts? I mean, it was a really intriguing mystery.
Also, there's that whole existential thing, right? The very young and the very old, a baby who should have her life ahead of her, right, for decades and decades and decades, and an old man who will be dead by next week, right? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
And by the way, the screenplay for the movie itself is done by Nelson Gidding. So there's that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, also the fact that the virus initially just turns everything turns blood into powder, and then how fast it mutates. I mean, had they just left the satellite alone for a couple of days, we might not have had a story other than, a whole town just drops dead.
You just leave it outside in the sun for a couple of days. It'll be fine.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Do you think like a Andromeda Strain today? Do you think it would work like that sort of story? Like I know that they've done Contagion films, but unlike that one, which was a little bit more, it's never been done kind of like that. Would there be anything else like they could like see in the future that might be the same thing, or is it going to be different?
It's hard to do an outbreak movie because I think we're like, especially living through a pandemic, right? Yeah. Okay. So we have the Black Plague. Okay, that is gonna be scary. The reason why this film worked was because of the time period, because of this Apollo program, and because these movies weren't very popular. There were a few out before that, but this was a big one.
Well, and also because the contagion didn't come from Earth; it came from outside of Earth.
Yeah, which is interesting because that's a common theme for these outbreak movies. Whereas the virus itself, it never just happens in London, Ontario, or Pennsylvania, or Los Angeles. It's always from afar. So you have this xenophobic thing going on, right? So we see this today. Yes, COVID-19, was that created in a Chinese lab in Wuhan province, right? There's debate over that. There's conspiracy theories over that, or at least theories over that, right? We don't know. But it shows that it's the foreigners who's bringing it in. So it ties in the whole racism and xenophobia of the time. Put that to space, that's just one additional level away because of the unknown.
Well, it's a level of magnitude scarier than things like V Wars or Sweet Tooth, where they've basically been drilling the Arctic ice caps for to see if there are any ancient bacteria that could either be useful or harmful to the human race. This is something that didn't come from the planet at all.
Yeah, wasn't that X-Files episode like season 2? I remember X-Files episode.
I don't remember.
Season 1.
Season 1, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Hey.
It was called Ice. It was basically a takeoff on The Thing.
Yeah, The Thing. Oh, speaking of what, The Thing is amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
The remake, the Carpenter remake.
Yes, yeah. No, lumbering monster like in the first one, but
that movie holds up really well too. I just recently watched it again, and the special effects on that movie are still horrifying and very realistic looking.
Yeah. I think movies like this, like especially this one, right? It was great in terms of its design, like the color code system of the different levels of decontamination of
decontamination.
Yes, and like the hazmat suits, right? It was almost like a space suits, but not quite. And there was like even the medical lab where they had to use a handle to jump into these giant suits that has the cord in the back in order to treat the patients or to interact with the patients. It was intense. Intense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more dialogue between people than most science fiction movies at that time. Like there's a little bit more discussion instead of just action all the time, which was more for people to like. It's not really a popcorn movie. It's more to think about.
It's more cerebral.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like Space Odyssey with HAL 9000. By this one, we have computers that work sometimes, but sometimes they don't. Hell, we have a printer that's supposed to be automated, and the printer screws up because of a mechanical mistake, right?
Yeah. Because a little slip of paper gets stuck between the bell ringer. That's just like, dude, you didn't think to check that?
That never happens.
That never happens at all.
Never. Oh God. I would be amiss if I didn't say this, but notice that the cover story they use of the secret base, the type of crop they were growing, barley. You know what they make barley. They use barley. Yeah, just saying. Yeah.
Well, it was. I was suspicious of how small that field was, though.
Yeah.
Like they could have made it a bit bigger, I guess. I don't know.
I like the line that they spent like $500,000. I forgot the dollar figure to make potholes in this off-road entrance, but really it was to cover up the tracks of the heavy equipment. They used. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. They spent money to make it look like no one had been there in decades. Yeah, that was great.
God, makes people wonder, what else is out there? What other secret bases,
Yeah.
Is there a secret base under this house, which we're recording at in London, Ontario, called the Ranch? It could be. That was playing a lot, actually. What else?
Now, I forget, within the context of the first movie/book only, did they explain why it evolved into a plastic-eating virus in the second phase?
No, they never talked about why it evolved. They just said that it did. Although I kind of had this flashback to TNG, where it's like, that we're basically growing the crystalline entity out of whatever it is we picked up from space. That's not frightening at all.
No, but viruses mutate. That's what viruses do. That's what life does, right? And we're living through the different variants of COVID-19 right now, and it's scary as hell. Yeah, and it's how do we learn? We learn through the scientific method and trying to be rational about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also animal testing. The fact that the animal testing part of this movie, it bothers the hell out of me, but they did it, right? They tested on a monkey and on a rat.
Well, would you prefer they tested it on humans?
Exactly.
One of my brothers is a neuroscientist. He has to do tests on animals all the time. So, yeah, it's like, do you do the tests on the animal, on the rats, or do you do tests on actual human beings? You can't just go giving human beings random drugs willy-nilly. That's just...
I know, and there's rational reasons why it's necessary. Yeah. I get that. Personally, I would use Ewoks or Gungans, but whatever.
Hey.
Okay.
Don't let the security staff hear you say that.
There we go. Also, technology. In this movie, we saw video conferencing, right? 1971. They were using video conferencing between different parts of the lab. Wow, who knew? Zoom, 1971. Skype or FaceTime. Oh, wow. And the mechanical arm was neat. And you see a lot of that with, say, George Lucas in THX 1138. That's a common trope as well, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have to put barriers up in order to deal with the foreign element. That's almost a metaphor of having a wall, right? So, yeah. And the one thing, when the one guy is trying to disarm the countdown sequence for the nuclear blast, right? One of the warning signs says something about animal escaping or animals. So even the central computer thinks of humans as animals. That was nice.
No. They said that the lasers were designed to pick off any animals that escaped up the shaft. I don't think they were. It was designed with humans in mind.
No, but it's. I see your point, right? And there's a design. It's the purpose of the design, done by the engineers, and then it's the reality of what we saw. It's like human trying to escape or trying to escape.
Well, I just have this thought that if the lasers were intended for humans, they would have been more powerful. I mean, the lasers just kind of drugged him. They probably would have killed a rat outright.
Yeah, they were pretty light.
Yeah.
I kill myself. But the whole, I know. I like the whole 601 error, the computer error, right? Right. That was key. And I like how they ended the film with that, right? Okay, too much data to process, which is actually accurate, right? Good way of thinking about the world is there's just too much information out there to process. And I don't know, Derek, what do you think of the whole cloud seeding thing?
The cloud what?
Seeding. How they the Andromeda Strain morphed into this thing that's in the atmosphere in the South Pacific, and so the U.S. government decides to seed it with this compound, which will drop the strain into the ocean, thereby killing it because of the acids in the ocean. I think it's science, right? Probably not, but I'm trying.
I'm trying to remember if that was
Sounds
actually in
about
the
right.
book or not. That might have been something for the movie.
Yeah. Okay, that's in the movie.
Sounds familiar from the book.
There we go.
But I mean, I do remember at the end of the book, basically, they did say that it managed to escape into the atmosphere. And I don't know if it encircled the entire planet, but it basically did escape and was in existence inside the upper atmosphere of the Earth. And of course, that posed a problem for space travel because it was eating the very plastic seals that are necessary for rocket ships and spaceships and space shuttles and everything. So they had a huge problem how to develop rockets that could travel up through the cloud without getting eaten by the plastic eating virus.
So it's kind of like space junk, but more organic. Interesting.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I'm big on space junk. That's been a running theme for last year for me. So yeah, professional. Oh God! And guys, do you know there was actually a miniseries done on this book from 2008?
I definitely saw it at the time that it aired, but I don't remember it well.
Yeah, I didn't remember seeing it, but it apparently was a thing. It was on A&E, and it was done by the fellow who did like Band of Brothers. What's his name? The director was Michael Salomon. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a 2-night special. I don't know. It's more like a reimaging, a reimage of the novel itself. But
as I recall, it was set in modern day, not in the 60s.
That's right. So it's not an adaptation. But it was cool. I would check it out if I had access to it.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was free somewhere, I definitely would have watched it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about what else we can talk about in the sense that it's actually a big sequel. We want a sequel, eh? Yeah. Do you think the world needs more virus movies, outbreak movies? Or is that too on the nose right now?
I don't know.
It's debatable. You had 12 Monkeys. You had, some of the other like Contagion, I think was another one. But if it had something, had to be very original. I guess that would be kind of unique. But I don't know. I mean, we've done the Alien thing quite a bit, and also Eternal.
Yeah, it's either we need to have biological warfare stuff to kill us, some sort of contagion, or we have to have nuclear atomic weapons to kill us, right? It's like we should find other ways to kill ourselves for storytelling purposes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about this is that the whole Andromeda strain, why did the U.S. government scoop it from space? Were they really trying to design and use it as a biological warfare device? Yeah.
I don't think they've ever really answered that.
No, but
it's left intentionally vague.
Yeah, and yet 50 years later, we have the Expanse series, right, with James S.A. Corey, and they used that in terms of the proto-molecule, right? So it's a theme in science fiction. It's an important theme because, yes, if it's valuable to someone, to governments or to states or to whatever, yeah, it's going to be exploited. It just is another resource to be exploited, and that's quite scary in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the sequel novel Andromeda Evolution, it doesn't really play like a medical viral crisis sort of thing. It's different from that. I won't spoil things, but I'll kind of explain like what the premise was. It takes place 50 years after the events of the original book. And basically, no one has seen the Andromeda Strain again since then. It got up into the atmosphere, but it just eats plastic. It doesn't hurt people, so it's harmless. And there's basically the public is unaware of what happened, but the space traveling community does know. And basically, the real reason for the International Space Station and the space race was to study Andromeda and to get samples of Andromeda. And Russia and China and the U.S. are secretly trying to study it to maybe find a way to make it into a weapon, or at the very least to neutralize it, because it poses a permanent danger to the mankind's future of space travel. because, like I said, it it eats the stuff that they need to get up into orbit. So 50 years have passed, nothing much has happened. There's been a U.S. military department that basically exists to watch for the return of Andromeda. And after 50 years of nothingness, they detect this black shape rising out of the Amazon rainforest. And it's just like this metal black obelisk that has the marks of the Andromeda strain, just like in the middle of nowhere. So they send a small team of scientists to find out what it is before they decide to bomb it or blow it up or what to do with it. And I don't want to give away too much, but suffice to say, it's a great page turner. It's like, even more than the first one, the fate of the world is literally at stake in it, like at the actions of like a handful of people. And some of it also, there's also characters on the International Space Station dealing with it. So you've got people down in the Amazon forest and people up on the International Space Station. So sometimes it's kind of like the movie Gravity with some real edge of your seat, outer space stuff going on. It is a great book. I've read it twice now. It's a great page turner. And it does kind of explain what the Andromeda strain is and why it theorizes anyway. But it's a great book. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of science fiction. I just started Anywhere's Hull Mary. He's a fellow who did The Martian. And there's aspects of this going on in his novel in the first 100 pages, at least, right? There's a threat to space travel. I won't get into the book itself because it's really cool. I'm just learning about this. But yeah, it's always a threat. It's some sort of microorganism threat, Interesting times.
Yeah, and I think we're going like the mission to Mars just recently that's been suggested by going to be more based on things like that. It's going to be enhanced more coming out, and
it makes me wonder if it's if for humanity's the better move for humanity is to send robots to these places rather than astronauts. And there's arguments on both sides, of course, but time will tell. Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of one little bit I want to mention from the novel. So in the novel, like I said, the International Space Station is partially there in order to study the Andromeda strain. And one thing that I thought was really cool was in order to study it, what they did was they built a sterile lab as a capsule of the space station. And there's never been a human inside it. They built a telepresence robot inside the capsule to work on the virus. So like a human being is never inside with the virus. It's just a robot being controlled by Wi-Fi to do the stuff. I thought that was a really neat idea.
Just going back
until
to
the Wi-Fi
itself.
goes down.
Yeah, that's what I thought about. Like, well, what happens if the robot breaks? What are you going to do then?
Don't mention Wi-Fi and the Internet of Gods. Don't jinx it, please. Oh, Jesus. So let's go back to the movie for a second, because the set design, I think, is outstanding in this film. Do you know the core sequence, the tower sequence with the lasers, right? That was a physical setting done on a soundstage in Los Angeles. They built that, and they broke cement, and they dug underneath the soundstage to fit it in.
Huh. I can see them doing that, yeah.
Amazing.
They're using.
Yeah, I forgot which one, but it's on the extras off the Blu-ray, and it's something else. And of course, you have special effects by Douglas Trumbull. He was a big guy in the 1970s in terms of special effects, right? He was the sci-fi guy. He did Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He did the Star Trek motion picture, the first one, right? He was going I think George Lucas wanted him for Star Wars: New Hope, but I'm reading between the lines, and Trumbull was too busy, and Lucas was in pain that much, so he missed out on Star Wars. But it was something else, And he went on to direct Silent Running and Brainstorm, which is amazing.
That's a great film.
Yeah, definitely. So, Douglas Trumbull, look him up. Wow, good stuff. Any last thoughts before we close the doors on the pub? Let's go over to Carrie. Any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think I lied a bit when I said I hadn't seen the movie. I know I've seen parts of the movie before this week. I just hadn't seen the whole thing until now. But yeah, the movie's good. The book is amazing, and yeah, go check it out.
Derek, last thoughts.
Read the sequel. It's even better than the first one. It's really good.
Cool. My last thoughts, just thinking about that's the filming sequences when they use the microscopes, right? That's just so intense and so new, right? That took a lot of effort, technical effort to film, and that's something else, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you see the green fluorescent strain, Andromeda strain on the metal mesh. Amazing.
Yeah.
Mike, any last thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think for a film student, they should really study the film itself and how the direction goes and everything that they incorporate in the film. It's an important testament of filmmaking, especially in the science fiction genre, and for stories for itself. It's pivotal, and we're better for it than not having it.
Well said. Well said. All right, folks, we're going to be closing our doors to the pub. This show is released as a podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe today. Check out our Discord. It's a great source of news and discussion. You can find our invite to the Discord server on our social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I do the Twitter and Instagram, and Derek does the Facebook page. Derek, you're doing a great job, man, on the Facebook page.
Thank you.
Keep that up, okay? Keep that up. All right. If you want to email the show, please send an email to management@scifipubcast.space. And as well, you can find our individual social media accounts on Twitter. Carrie, what's your Twitter address?
My Twitter handle is Carrie Blackfire42. That's KERI Blackfire42.
And what other podcasts are you on?
I am on DC Talk, Cape Chronicles, and Enter the Dojo over on the Random Chatter Network.
Great. Please check out her shows over the Random Chatter Network. She puts in a lot of work, and it's entertaining as hell. And
thank you, Joe.
And I don't think she drops the F-bomb nearly as much on those.
Well,
shows,
because I'm not allowed to over there.
Yeah, fair enough. Uh-huh. Derek, what's your Twitter address?
I am at Derek J. Beebe.
Excellent. Mike, where can people find you on social media?
On Facebook, it's just Michael Sinkins. And on Instagram, it's D Art Lab. And that's it.
And people can find examples of your art and stuff you're working on?
Absolutely. Some music as well.
Excellent. All right, Mike, thanks for doing that. You are welcome back on the show anytime you want, sir.
Oh, thank you.
And
Nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you, Derek.
And I can be found on Twitter at Joel_Welch, WELCH. It's closing time. Please make it home safely. We will see you next time. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Music provided courtesy of Logan Rathbone. Podcast logo by Duran. Copyrighted Joe Welch. Listen responsibly. And we can't wait for your next visit to our fine establishment. Cheers.